Colorado Inside Out's own Penfield Tate announced last weekend that he is running for mayor of Denver, providing the highest profile competition to incumbent Mayor Michael Hancock to date. Tate is a former state lawmaker and a former mayoral candidate back in 2003. Kayvon Kalabari greeted the news by suspending his campaign for mayor. Patty, Tate didn't pull any punches, especially in an interview he did for your paper with Michael Roberts. What do you think of the announcement?
Well, first of all, it has nothing to do with Kayvon pulling out. And Kayvon's been running for 18 months, had a lot of really strong pronouncements, and we really don't know what's prompted his departure. You know, it's interesting that Penn was at this table. We see other alum who have moved on to august positions like Tom Tancredo. Don't know if his role on Colorado Inside Out sent him to Congress, but it wasn't enough to send him to the governor's office, or in fact, maybe it made sure he didn't get to the governor's office. When you think back to 2003, when Penn ran for mayor, think about the candidates we had. It wasn't just John Hickenlooper, who started out polling at 3%, but we had Ari Zavaris. We had a lot of public leaders and a really strong field. And what it also did is it prompted a great discussion on where we were going in Denver. We haven't had that discussion in the last 8 years. It is really hard to beat an incumbent. Now, in 2003, Webb wasn't running again. We didn't have a third term, someone going for a third term. We do with Hancock now, and the problem is we haven't had a really good debate on where this city is going. I think the great thing about Penn getting in is we will have that debate now. We will really talk about what's gone on in Denver over the last 8 years.
David, on paper, Denver has record low unemployment. You see growth everywhere. Land value is at all-time highs. Running against that on paper is difficult. What do you think is going to be the secret for Tate to run against that, against a two-term incumbent?
Two things. I mean, well, first of all, their ideological differences are not very large. So it is more, in some respects, about competence more than ideology. And you have on the one side, you know, Mayor Hancock, who has these incredible, grandiose 30-year visions for the city. And Tate, who also knows a lot about how the city works, I think has much more of a focus on let's make things work right now instead of all this talk of the great central plan we have that's going to shape Denver, you know, in the 37th century. And you look at the practical things, you know, for all the spending that the city of Denver is doing at record levels, do they bother to keep the sidewalks in southwest Denver in repair? And finally, I'd say there is one key policy difference on them, at least that's important to me. Is, you know, Hancock won his first term with his commercial about how he drives his kid to school every day. What a tremendous virtue. Practically a superhero. I've never heard of any parent who does that. But Hancock's plan, and Tate's complained about this on this show, is to make traffic worse so he can satisfy all the people, the Puritans, who think, you should be biking or taking the bus, and driving a car to work by yourself is like, that's a very sinful activity. And Tate is much more focused on, no, let's actually have the traffic flow in this city function. Let's not change the road grid to try to cause traffic jams.
Eric, how does Mayor Hancock respond to a challenge like this? This isn't an this isn't a community activist with maybe a small but vocal group of people. This is much more mainstream, probably knocking on the same doors donor-wise that Mayor Hancock might have been doing these last several months. How does Hancock respond?
Well, if the spin I'm getting from the mayor and the mayor's people is any indication, I think it is. They take this very seriously. They know Penfield Tate is a serious challenger. He's not one of the ones you just described, Dominic, that is more of a marginal candidate from some isolated constituency. Just a couple thoughts. First of all, kudos to Penn. I mean, Penn has been a wonderful part of this panel. He's an insightful guy. I've enjoyed our dialogues when we agree, when we disagree. He's now decided to throw his hat in the ring, get in the arena, and more power to him for doing so. Secondly, this city, and I think Patty touched on this point, this city needs a mayor's race. This city needs an engaged debate. And we'll see if there's another shoe to drop, in meaning not in terms of Hancock and the way it is usually referred to these days, but in terms of another serious candidate getting into the race. Is this going to be Penfield Tate, Michael Hancock, or is this going to be the two of them plus one or two other potentially serious candidates. But in any event, I think even if it's just the two of them, the city is assured of two viable candidates, strong candidates, discussing important issues, picking the future of this town. To Patty's point, throwing out incumbent mayors is not something this town does lightly. The last one was Federico Pena defeating Bill McNichols in 1983. What's that math, 35 years ago? It's not something that happens with any frequency. Tate is clearly the underdog. Hancock is clearly the incumbent favorite. But I think this town, if presented the right case by the right candidate, is ready to consider a change.
You know, your reminder of McNichols makes me believe that this year we will have the finest snow removal in Denver throughout the entire winter. You will not have to worry about any sort of rutted streets. It'll be immaculate this winter if anyone has a history book at the mayor's office. Ed, you see all these cranes around town. You see how well business is doing. Does that translate to business leader support of Mayor Hancock, or can it be divided when you have somebody with Tate's background?
I think it can certainly be divided, and as David well referenced, I mean, if you own a business on South Broadway, you're probably complaining about the bike lanes. We've heard a lot of that, for example. But in some ways, I think the way that Penfield Tate came out of the gate implies that he is looking to be more of a slow growth candidate. And that's not a candidate who's going to get business support. I mean, you have him talking about disruptive development. You have him talking about gentrification. You have him talking about affordable housing. And mind you, these are three things that the mayor talks about too. But having someone get into the race on those premises shows that the mayor's not doing enough on it. And I think you're going to see people flock to Tate, not the ones who are saying, all right, we need to build quicker, but the ones who are saying, yeah, I'm tired of all the things going up around this town. So I don't think this is going to be a straight business candidate, not business candidate race. Hancock has done some things that business has really liked, such as, say, the camping ban that'll probably be on the ballot while these two are running, which will become an issue in this race. He's done some things with some housing fees that they haven't. But this is definitely looking like it's a grow as we are versus let's rethink this growth a little bit.